episode of We're Talking Shift. And I think we're going to get into a actually a pretty deep conversation today. Uh, what do you think, Lauren?
Here's hoping. I'm ready to go swimming in the depths of this conversation, Lori. I have put a lot of thought, as a divorced person who's in another relationship, a very different relationship. I've had a lot of thought about the meaning of marriage and what that should look like in my life. And it brings me to the question of unconditional love and what is a love that is without conditions. And I think, a lot there are whenever you have a conversation with people and you say like what is it that you love about your partner? It's a condition often. And that's concerning to me. And I've been thinking about it and I just wonder if people are capable of unconditional love in a marriage or otherwise.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I think the short answer is almost never. But because that's striving to be something that is really, it's like, okay, that's like the highest spiritual, right, thing you can attain to do or to be is having the capacity for unconditional love. If
It
we
does
all
seem
had
very
that,
godly.
yeah, if we all had that, we would not be in continual, strife and conflict and wars and all the other nasty stuff that goes on and has been going on since I guess recorded time, right? So I think it's a lofty thing to endeavor to aspire to, right? So first of all, when we when we talk about unconditional love, especially in the context of romantic relationships, I think it's really helpful to kind of zoom out and look at the different levels of relationship that exist. So, according to human needs psychology, there are three levels of relationship. All right. And then, by the way, these are not, this is something I learned, gosh, 15 years ago, 16 years ago when I was doing my some life coach training through the Tony Robbins coach training. So this is where this comes from. It's a very enlightening framework, and I have really noticed that there's a lot of truth in this. So, okay, there's three levels of relationship according to this human needs psychology. Uh, Level one is kind of like the baby stage. It's all about me, me, me. Because when you think of it, a baby is only there to receive. It's not capable yet of being concerned
Hmm.
about anybody else's needs, right? It needs to have its needs met, and that is all that matters, right? So level 1 is like the baby stage, baby love. It's all about what are you doing for me? There's no real sense of contribution, just a need to be fulfilled. So it's very self-focused, right? And, I mean, that's okay because we all start there as babies. But if a relationship stays there, then it's not going to be healthy or sustainable. Clearly, it's going to be very one-sided. So it's not gonna last. Or if it does last, one of those people are going to be pretty bitter and resentful and unfulfilled, right?
I would think so. I can't even think of a relationship in my life that has looked like that, except maybe parenting my children. And maybe ironically enough, that is the one unconditionally loving relationship that I feel I'm capable of having.
Yeah, and that is very normal for parenting. When you have that, you when you have that baby, all of a sudden there's a whole new level of love, in usually in the form of unconditional love, that you have not experienced before. So
Right.
it's quite an opportunity for a massive up leveling of what you're capable of as a human. Yeah.
Definitely. But when we're first dating, don't be a baby. I'm not here to baby you.
Yeah. Yeah, it does happen. It does happen with some people, but yeah,
Yikes.
I
No, thank
mean,
you.
that can happen when two people are drawn together and one is got a very strong characteristic of caretaking and people pleasing, and they may attract
Mm.
somebody that wants that. And
Mhm.
so it becomes the dynamic in the relationship, not necessarily consciously, but it just, that's what happens. So it's not difficult for certain people to fall into that pattern, depending on what they are, their character is prone to.
That's really
And
interesting. Okay, what's the next
right.
level?
So then there's a level two. Now, this is the kind of exchange mindset. So it's very transactional. And this is what you're really talking about that you see a lot. It's like, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. I'm going to give to you, but only if I'm getting something back. Right.
Yes.
So it's sometimes, that seems like fair, maybe on the surface. But if you think of it, that's, I mean, it's not going to work. It's not going to work to be a very fulfilling relationship because now you're keeping score. And when one person feels like, I'm losing here, I'm giving way more than I'm getting, now you have a problem, right? And so it's rooted a lot of times in fear or scarcity, like, I'm not getting enough, there's not enough to go around, I'm giving too much. It's very fear based. So they feel like, if I don't get back what I think I'm giving in equal measure, then I'm losing out. Okay. And this is
I
where a
think
lot of
that
people get stuck.
Yes, I think the other side of that too is not so much about what I'm giving, it's about what am I getting from the other person. So
Yeah.
this is where I think a lot of marriages do exist in this kind of middle ground where it is like I love my partner because he supports me and because he takes care of me and makes me feel good and he cooks meals for me and takes me places and it's like yeah, as long as he's giving you all those things, you love him, right? That is the condition.
Right.
So
So it's,
even if it's not necessarily like I'm cooking for him and I'm taking him on vacations and I comfort him, even if it's not that as much, it is like really transactional. And what if he did none of that? What do
right.
you love about him? What do you truly love about this person? It
Yeah.
is transactional.
Yeah. So it's a barter system. So that, the person that feels like, okay, I'm getting all of this done for me, and that's why I love this person, is they're constantly doing these things for me that are important to me. These are the things that I want. And that person is in somehow, they're giving something. The other person is getting something as well
Hmm.
from that person.
Right.
Everyone's giving and taking. It is a barter system. It's
Well, let me
scorekeeping.
ask you this.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe our ancestors and stuff and the arranged marriages, that was probably kind of set up on this idea that everyone kind of contributes their best to the other person and the marriage works that way. Do you think we've strayed too far for that to be a positive relationship anymore?
Well, I think that it depends on the society in the past that you're talking about. I mean, there have been, marriages in certain societies, and it still to this day in some are arranged because it somehow betters the status of one of the families. So it's still used as a bartering tool for someone's gain.
Hmm.
Okay. And that's not anything new. That's been,
Right.
oh, a father has several daughters and he's going to have a dowry to go with each one of them, which is like,
Right.
here, what else can I bribe you with? For this other person who has a son, and somehow that's going to be a good arrangement for everyone. And so it's purely transactional in that sense. And I think, a lot of people are still doing their version of that, even if it's not like an arranged marriage. But there's a lot of things that people are looking for, that they feel a marriage to a certain person is going to create a good partnership. So and if that's what their criteria are for everyone's somehow, emotional well-being or their status in society, whatever it is, everybody has their reasons. And if both parties are very fulfilled by that, whatever, if that works, then it works. But I think most people are looking for more of a deeper relationship that is not based on just kind of the superficial things.
Do you think most people are capable of the deeper relationship?
Capable, I think I don't know.
Or
Honestly.
even likely to find it? I'm thinking about my previous relationship,
Okay.
and there came a point when I knew it wasn't like we weren't soulmates, and I knew that. But I did kind of justify, like, we have a system that works. Like, we are, he is providing and I am raising our children, and it's working. And we have to achieve this goal of like having our family intact and raising these children. And for that, we could kind of contribute our individual talents, I guess, and make that happen. But it also got to a place, I think, for him where he also kind of realized maybe he wanted something more specifically from me, and I was not going to be capable of that in that particular relationship, in addition to a thousand other things that had just, kind of piled on. But
Sure.
I do think that for some people it can work as long as you said, everyone's kind of on board with that plan and that mentality.
Yeah.
But then I do wonder, is everyone capable or likely to find something different? What's the next level of this?
Yeah, I don't that and that's a good question. I I don't know. I can't speak for everyone else. Is everyone, I guess if you're a human, you've somehow in you got the capability, but depending on what needs you need fulfilled and what your values are, how you express that in a relationship might it's not going to be the same for everyone. Um
Do you think it's fair for one partner to be willing to accept that more transactional, we're already in this marriage, we already have these kids, we already share a mortgage, we have a business together. Is that something that needs coaching, or, how does that work? What do you think? What do you think?
Well, it's so individual, Lauren. I mean, it just depends on what a person is willing to be okay with in their life. If you are totally satisfied, if you feel like you're settling, but you decide that you are okay with settling, then that's what you're going to do. Not everyone feels like, I don't think I'm 100% fulfilled, so I've got to go figure out how to do that. Some people do. That is a mission. I want to feel like how am I completely fulfilled in my life in whatever area, but in a relationship, and they're going to try to figure that out. And sometimes it means leaving the current one. But some people are, they're okay. They're okay with it. It's not worth giving up what they have in order to search for something that may elude them. You know, they're okay with the
Yeah.
status quo. They don't want to rock the boat. Not everybody is equipped to do that in a manner that is in their supports their greatest sense of well-being. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
But
I really think a lot of marriages are in that transactional area. And I also think that a lot of people in a lot of relationships,
Mhm.
I don't know if this has just been like in my lifetime or like my observation or what, but I do think there often comes a time when one or both kind of wakes up and says, "What am I doing? This isn't what I thought it would be." And then they go looking for the next level of relationship.
Yeah, that is what happens because and a lot of times it is because they're in that exchange mindset. So when the other person isn't giving them what they feel they need, sometimes rather than looking at a greater opportunity for them for their own personal growth and evolution, they just abandon the relationship and they look for somebody else to fill their needs better.
Mm.
All right. So that brings us to level 3. All right. This is where things can really start to shift, because you're right. Most people are generally living or having a relationship that falls into that level 2 category, the barter system. Okay. So level 3 is where love becomes very generous. It's really where each partner is focusing on the other person's needs. So it's not about giving in order to get, you're giving because you want to. So there's a greater, I think, level of emotional maturity here and spiritual maturity. And honestly though, if you can get to that point, that's where really the magic can happen in a relationship. It's where real trust and connection and frankly joy live. It's the place where relationships hit a level of unattained by most. So you're giving love, you're trying to fulfill your partner's needs because you want to, not because of what you may get in return. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I'm just racking my brain wondering, has anyone achieved this level of relationship? I think about like people my age oftentimes idolize like their grandparents' relationships. And they're like, my grandparents were married for 75 years. And to me, it's like, that's not necessarily romantic because they probably were not completely in love for 75 years. Like, I think it wore off at some point and they went back to the transactional.
Well,
It's just the way that I think people operate.
I
So
think
you paint this picture of this fairy tale, and I just don't know, Loree.
well, um, I think it does happen. I think there are some people that have experienced that. Maybe maybe not most, but I think some. I feel like being married now myself for over 40 years, and having lived now for over 4 decades with the same man and raised children. I can look back and I can see our evolution as a couple, and how there's been the greatest opportunities to reach this level through all of the things that we navigated throughout the course of the relationship. So I don't know. I think it is possible. I feel like I'm that we are in that place now at this stage of the game. I feel like it's you know, everyone has their speed bumps and their challenges, and we're no different in that way, that we've gone through those too. But we didn't cut and run. We didn't say, you know, no matter how upset somebody might have been over something, we didn't just throw in the towel and go, this person is just not going to do it for me. They just can't, it's just not working. They can't give me what I need, whatever all the stuff is. We stayed the course, we work through it, we grow through it, and then it's even better. So I would say that level 3 is very attainable. I think that a lot of people, though, don't give themselves the chance to work their way there.
Mm.
They give up easily. Not everybody is meant to be together forever, but I think a lot of people lose the opportunity to even see if that's possible for them because they give up too easily and too quickly. They're not willing to each person in the relationship has to be willing, though. It's not going to work if only one is willing to evolve and to try to do better and to try to understand their partner better. There's a lot that goes into that, but I believe I believe it is possible, and I believe that a lot of people do get there. But I think most live at level 2. Level 3, you have to be very willing to go, I'm in this. I'm in this for the long haul, as long as as long as it's built on a foundation of a healthy relationship.
Is that a condition? That sounds like a condition.
Well, it's a condition in the sense that it, there's unconditional love applies to yourself too. So if you are, for example, living with someone that is abusive, you can still unconditionally love them, but that doesn't mean you have to live with them and be abused, because now you're not loving yourself.
Mm,
So it's not really a condition. It's it's I think that I think it's still unconditional love. You could, because you are not, you don't have to withhold love from that person, but that doesn't mean you make yourself a doormat.
right,
So I don't
right.
know. I guess you could call it a condition, but it is, whatever. If it is a condition, then it's an appropriate one.
Agreed.
Okay.
Absolutely agree. Do you think relationships that have been in the level two and have been kind of comfortably level two transactional, and we're just kind of getting by and doing life together, and he brings home the bacon and I fry it up kind of thing. Do you think those can turn into unconditional level three type relationships? With, I mean, obviously it sounds like that takes a lot of work and commitment, but um I feel like I have a personal opinion here that I just don't know that unconditional love in romantic relationships is a thing. So I feel like level three for me is categorized as something different. But I want to know, do you think a level two can become a level three?
Absolutely.
What does that take? How do you get there?
Well, it takes both people deciding that that's what they want. So both people have to know and agree, okay, this is actually, if we're being honest, the level that we're, living at or relating at. And here's another level. Do we both think that this is something we would like to strive to reach together? And if it's a mutual goal, then I don't know why you wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay. I think in my mind, I feel like if we're working that way, maybe this next one that you're going to describe will clear some of this up for me, because I just feel like the relationship that I'm in right now, I would not say is unconditional, because if I ever found out that he hurt my child or was otherwise just like a really shitty person, I don't love him anymore. So it's not unconditional, but it's also not transactional. It's not a lot of work, but I would work for it. You know what I mean? Maybe you're gonna clear this up for me. But it's not unconditional. He can screw this up, and I need him to know that.
Sure, but yeah, okay. So we'll come back to that, because that is kind of a little bit about that. That's kind of what we were just touching on before, But so we'll come back to it. So here's level four. This is the the rare level, extraordinarily rare. This is the level of love and contribution that we saw from some of our greatest spiritual leaders, like Jesus, like the Buddha, like Gandhi. These are people who showed love to even those who harmed them, right? So most of us are not operating at that on a day-to-day level. It's pretty difficult for most of us. But it's a powerful reminder of what's possible. That's why they were demonstrating this, right? They were creating um, a message, a blueprint, a pattern for us to strive to rise to, right? So, but it's possible when we elevate love beyond just personal relationships and apply it to humanity as a whole. Okay, so you're coming at the whole idea of unconditional love from a much loftier, higher spiritual level. So, the takeaway here is, if you want to, if it's a goal for you to be able to receive the message of some of these, our greatest spiritual teachers that walked the earth before us, then they've shown you how to do it. They've left a blueprint. And that means you're loving those who would even seek to harm you, because you're looking at this from a much higher place, a much broader, deeper place. Um, but I mean, I think the takeaway would be, when we're feeling any sense of pain in a relationship, it's usually because we're stuck at level 1 or level 2. So the shift can begin when we genuinely, with all of our hearts, try to understand what our partner is going through, what are their needs, what are they struggling with. And I think when we approach our relationships from that place of curiosity and wanting to contribute, that's when we start to create something that's very real and has the potential to last. Okay. I, in my humble opinion, I think that is when you've reached the height of spiritual maturity as a human. And so few of us get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big ask for most of us. Is it possible? Of course it is. It's been done. And I'm sure there are people walking the planet today that are at that place, but they are few and far between. And the rest of us are trying to really manage our judgment about everyone else. And how can we love that person unconditionally when they're a monster? That's where that's the level that most of us are operating at, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So back to your question. Okay, would you still love your spouse, basically, if they murdered murdered or your loved ones, abused your children, if they cheated on you, right? I mean,
Right.
okay, so if my goal is to be at that level 4, and I'm trying to be as Christ-like as possible, then yeah, you could still love the person. You're loving the spirit of that person. You're loving their soul. But again, loving them unconditionally doesn't mean that you condone bad behavior. You can condemn the behavior, but not the person. I mean, when rules are broken, especially those kind of rules, there's consequences. It and that has nothing to do with giving or withholding love, right? You don't do the wrongdoer any favors by saying, well, I love you anyway, so it's okay. That's not what unconditional love is. You're just looking at it as this person doesn't know what they're doing. They're misbehaving, in the most horrific ways, but it's not for me to choose what their real value is a human. That's for source, that's for God, that's for the creator. So you can still love the divinity of that person, but that doesn't mean that you let them behave badly.
This reminds me of when we hear like victim impact statements in courtrooms and people say like, I forgive you for what you did. And it's like, what? Because I don't. I would never forgive some of this stuff that people, they just must be operating on a higher spiritual level than I am, because I would never be able to say, you know what, enjoy your vacation in prison for, hurting someone close to me. I would never. I would never. But you're right. I think some people do kind of reach that level of higher spirituality, I guess, and that makes sense. Now that you're saying this, like those people, I'm like, okay, that's what that is.
Well, because the lack of forgiveness is just a burden for them to continue to carry. So that sense of resentment, of bitterness, of feeling like you were victimized will erode your own life. It will eat you up from the inside out. So the forgiveness is really, in that sense, it's as much for the individual that's doing the forgiving to divest themselves of the terrible feelings, right? And not carry that forth into their life. It doesn't undo anything. And it's a statement of the person who, the wrongdoer. Now, the rest is up to that person and their, their journey into the unknown. That's not up to us to figure out. That's up to the creator to sort out. So that person is saying, basically, I forgive for myself because I'm not going to carry this with me into the rest of my life. And it's not my job to, it's not my job to figure out what you should or should not be experiencing now. It's our job as a society to keep people from harming others. That's why we have jails, and that's fair. If you're behaving badly and you're doing harm to others, then here's the consequence. You don't get to do that anymore. We put fences around you. But beyond that, as far as that person's life journey, as they finish up their life on earth and then transition to whatever is next, that's beyond our skill set. It's beyond our scope of practice. That's for the greater, the greater being to sort out. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. So, taking it back to marriage or partnership or romantic relationships, um, at what point do you think, as a third party, so if you're coaching someone in a situation, um, at what point do you start to recognize that um, this is bordering on unhealthy versus just like we're determined to make this relationship work? Do you have any like red flags?
Yeah, I mean, usually that's pretty if you're paying attention, listening to the client, to what they say and to what they don't say, you pick up on the red flags. But um my job is to help them with what they want help with. Even though there may be red flags, if that client is still really wanting to make things work, then my job is to do what I can to help them achieve that and let them come to it on their own. So eventually, either things are going to get better, or in a lot of cases, things are not going to get better. They're going to continue to, um, devolve, in which case, then the client, when they're ready, will say, okay, this isn't working. So, uh, new plan. All right.
Right.
Then we can help with that. But it's not my job to go, I think you're making a big mistake here. I think you need to, unless, and again, there's always the unless there's harm, unless
Right.
there's abuse, harm, and that's apparent. But outside of that, then it's my job, or a coach's job, to help them do what they came there for help, to ask you to help them with. And
Okay,
most people
fair.
come to it on their own. And that's happened many times.
I know. I know. What are some conditions, Lori, that either you've seen or that apply in your relationship, maybe, or just things that you think are reasonable conditions in a partnership?
Well, I think it's reasonable to have a set of principles that you are building the relationship on, that
Mm,
everyone agrees to. And those are pretty much the obvious things that most people want. They want to be able to trust their partner. They want to have at least fundamentally the same values, right? They want to have a sense of honesty and openness. Each partner should be able to feel comfortable, um, you know, feeling the way they feel about things and sharing those feelings. There should be the willingness to understand your partner. It's not rocket science. It's pretty easy for you to go, what do I want? Okay, am I willing to give that to my partner? And those, they have to be agreed upon though. Everyone has
So
to
this
have,
is a
yeah, go ahead.
is this a conversation that we're having in our relationships?
I mean, do you think it should be a conversation?
Oh, I've had this conversation.
Uh-huh. So, and was it worth having the conversation? Do you find it?
I think if you're not comfortable having the conversation, you're probably not in the right relationship, in my humble opinion. But
Yeah.
who knows? Who am I to judge?
Yeah. I mean, clearly it clearly it makes sense to talk about some of the things that are, here's the deal breaker for me, right? And that's what you lay out there so that everyone is very clear. I mean, I think for a lot of people, you go into a relationship assuming that you have those same deal breakers as we've talked about in the past, assuming that you have the same values, assuming that you are wanting to head in the same direction as you journey through life together. There's a lot of assumptions that just get made because everything is just so fun and wonderful in the beginning. And it's not until you come into a conflict over something that all of a sudden, oh, yeah. Okay, now we have to figure this out because we have two different, points of view on this, on two different
Hmm.
sets of values around this. So, of
Right.
course, and it's never too late to have the conversation. That's what
I think it's
mature people
important to be
do.
had. Yeah. All right, Lori, this might be a bit of a pivot for you, but I want to sling something else your way. Um, I feel like for the first time in my life, I am in a relationship that I used to really relate so much to that phrase that people say of like marriage is hard and being in love is a choice. And I could relate to that because it was very hard and it was a choice. And it turns out it doesn't have to be that hard. And it doesn't have to be, in my opinion, at this point, a choice. Um, is that something different, or is that I don't know. I think if it got to the place where I had to really think, like, am I going to continue to fight for this relationship? Like, fighting for your relationship is one thing, but forcing something that just isn't what you wanted it to be or what you thought it was, I feel is something very different. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people have been conditioned now that, like, love is very difficult. And every day you have to fight for your relationship. And you're fighting for the wrong thing, in my opinion, at some point. Like, can we all just not be the Reagans? Right? I don't think they were fighting for their relationship. They just had it like that.
Interesting. Well, there's kind of a lot to unpack there. So, to me, um, when people say marriage is hard, I, I don't know. Marriage is, I mean, it's not really. Marriage is just the thing that we are qualifying a relationship set up in a certain way. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not the marriage that's hard; it's the commitment to another person that
Mm-hmm.
people start to trip up over because people start showing up in ways that you either don't like, that are, disappointing to you, that aren't what you want, that upset you, that don't, fulfill your idea of how they should be showing up. So you get very disturbed by the other person when they start showing up in a way that you don't like or don't approve of, and it's just not doing it for you. That's about each individual, and it's about the interaction and the relationship between the two. So it's not about marriage, it's about each person and how they are going to be in relationship with each other, whether you're married or not. So the marriage is hard thing to me is, I don't know, I don't even get that. I just
I
don't.
feel like life is hard. And if we are going through life together, particularly like, you know, financial downturn in the economy and like we're clinging to each other and trying to make the mortgage, like that's probably hard. Like raising kids is hard. Who knows what hand you've been dealt in that realm? Like it could be really hard. I feel like those are the things that are hard, but it should be made easier by having a partner by your side, not more difficult. It shouldn't be like we're fighting for the marriage. That's crazy to me. But I think I have that perspective because I came out of one situation and I'm experiencing something different. If I were still fighting for my marriage, I would probably feel like that's the valiant thing to do, because marriage is hard and we have to choose every day. I don't.
Well, yeah, if you're in that mindset of marriage is hard, then you kind of need to look beyond what does that mean to you? What is what are you talking about exactly? So
Yeah.
it's more about, this relationship is hard and here's
Yes.
why. So you got to be, just get down to the nitty-gritty of it. But I don't know. I think that a lot of people fall into a place of believing that everything is so hard when it's just stuff to do. I, I mean, when everything that is challenging doesn't have to completely take the wind out of your sails. It doesn't have to completely, make you buckle at the knees. It doesn't have to make you, I mean, some things, there are some serious things that, yeah, that's going to be really hard. And I get
Hmm.
that. But I think people make things that are just the challenges of everyday life, let's say, like, yeah, maybe it's finances, maybe it's, whatever. I think if you just go, what do we need to do about this? Here's the thing, here's the challenge, here's the conflict, here's the trouble. How do we work our way out of this? What's the solution? How do we figure out what the strategy is? And then that's the nice thing about having a partner that you can try to work on that together. Um, right. But it doesn't have to be the greatest source of stress ever. I mean, I think that people get so rooted in things that are in the big scheme of things not that important, and you allow yourself to get really wound up and stressed over things that, at the later on in life you look back and go, why was I so bent out of shape over that? It means nothing.
Right.
And so I think keeping things in perspective can be really difficult for people. And in a day and age where we have so much available to us to avoid being challenged and avoid conflict and avoid things, that when we do bump up against something, oh my God, it's like the sky is falling. And it's just, it's just life. It's just life. Just get up, do the thing you need to do to get through it and move on. I
It's
just,
definitely relative. I think a lot of people who have been through a whole heck of a lot, like some of the things that I've been through, is a walk in the park for those people. I think about it sometimes like, when my daughters were born, they were premature and they were in the NICU, and it was really touch and go at points for a span of several weeks. And for whatever reason, it never sunk into me how really very serious that situation was. I think I was just kind of going on adrenaline and hormones at that point. Like a couple of years later, I looked back and I was like, man, it must be so hard to have like a sick child, like a child who is ill, potentially like terminally ill. Like, how do parents deal with that? And I'm
yeah.
like, well, how did I deal with my issue? You know what I mean? Like, that could have been the end of life for either of my children as well. I just think that it's all kind of relative. Like, for me, I didn't look at it as, my kids have cancer and they are in the hospital for the rest of their lives. I looked at it as like, okay, we're starting out in the hospital and this really sucks and it's going to be a very long time of like an uphill battle, but we're going to be fine. You know what I mean? I think it's relative. And then there are other people who their kids have never been through anything. And so when all of a sudden they hit seventh grade and algebra 2 is difficult, it's like, this is the most difficult parenting challenge of my life, that my
Yeah.
child is struggling in math, you know?
Yeah,
Right.
that's such a good point. It is relative. It really is. And that's why it's so good when you are, hitting a situation like that in your life to really step back and get a really big, broad perspective and ask yourself, okay, how threatening to our entire lives is this situation? How invested in do I need to be as far as my emotional investment in this is, what is this? If you're right. I mean, if it's a very, very sick child, that's going to be one set of circumstances. And to your point, if it's my seventh grader is really stressed out and having anxiety attacks because they're struggling in math, okay, is that something to get really stressed and worked up over? I don't think so. You get help, you figure it out, and you move on. I mean, it's just again, in the big scheme of things, it's not even a speed bump,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I think it's just too easy to get focused on every little thing and lose sight of all of the good things that are going on in a person's life, the good things happening around you, the good things that are available to you, the lifestyle that you get to live here in this country anyway.
Hmm.
So yeah, perspective is everything.
Do you have any practical tips for people who are in a relationship and they're not sure if it's kind of run its course or if this is one of those times where they have to make the decision that we are sticking with this? Do you have any, wisdom for those people? Where's the perspective?
Well, when a relationship, when one or I guess, one or both parties feel like it's sort of run its course, again, I think it's just a matter of we need to really be honest with each other. And it doesn't mean that they no longer love each other. It just means that maybe they both are realizing that this is not the life partner. It's just not. It's just not the life partner. And it doesn't, you, you're really showing a lot more love to that person when you are honest with them about that, so that each can move on to find maybe that more perfect partner that they're meant to go through life with. So I think, withholding your honest feelings is not fair. So you gotta bring it up. You gotta have the talk. And everyone, even though, if both partners are in agreement, then that makes it easy. Great. Okay. If we love each other, let's figure out how to unwind all this and go on our way. But if it's only one person, that's where it's very difficult because, the guilt, a person might be feeling really guilty if they feel that way and they know the other doesn't, and that makes it difficult. But again, you're not doing the person that maybe wants to keep the relationship intact when one's like, I'm just not into it anymore. You're not doing that other person any favors by letting them believe that you are. It's dishonest. So it's unfair to them because they're not going to get the best of you. And it's not fair for you because you are feeling like you are not, getting what you feel you need. So, you got to rip off the band aid. That's
I
fair.
am
That's
looking
honest.
forward I'm looking forward to a conversation sometime this week wherein I'm going to ask my partner, what are the conditions of your love? And have him tell me all the crazy things he would not accept. And I'm just going to see if I can push the limits. I'm
Well,
kidding.
I
I'm
think it
kidding.
could be a fun conversation. I mean, maybe
I
he,
agree. I agree. I did tell him very recently, this is my favorite restaurant, and I appreciate that you come here even though you don't love it, because this could be a deal breaker if you weren't willing to accept my weekly trip to this restaurant. And he, of course, I love to come here with you. Obviously, that wouldn't actually be a condition of my affection. But yeah, I think it's important for everyone to know what their conditions are and to have those conversations if you're in a relationship that matters or that is going somewhere or that you want to go somewhere. I think these are conversations that should be had. So
yeah.
we appreciate this, Loree, and I love that we've broken down all the levels. I'm going to start looking around and categorizing what I think people are.
Well, you know what? You can kind of see it with people that you know really well and you've known for a
Hmm.
long time that are in relationship. You can kind of start picking out some of those things. But everyone some people are just fine with that. They're okay with it. So then don't rock the boat. If they're good with it, then that works for them. But there are levels, and I think it's kind of really cool to have an understanding of those, especially if you are in a relationship that you feel like, I want this to be better. I think we both do, but why are we feeling like we're kind of stuck here? That's when it's really nice to go, oh, I see what's happening. Because a lot of times these are not things you're intentionally doing. You just doing them because that's, what you saw demonstrated for you. You're just not thinking about it, whatever. You just don't maybe realize it. It's not always a conscious manipulation. It's just the way that you're doing it. So becoming aware of that and going, maybe I could do something a little differently here. And you just start one thing at a time, one way at a time, one action at a time, one, sentiment at a time, kind of shifting and see how things play out. You might be surprised, pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely. Loree, I am going to also start identifying the transactions that are taking place in my relationships, all
Uh-huh.
of them, just to, upset myself and cause unnecessary stress and trauma. That's a joke. But I do want to point out that to some degree, when your life is intricately meshed with another person's, there are transactions taking place. That's just the way that it is sometimes. I cook the dinner, he cleans the kitchen. He takes out the trash, I check the mail, that kind of thing. I
Sure.
feel like there's no shame in that game. We got to make it work somehow.
Well, yeah, but those aren't things that you're going to base your actual love on. Those are
Now,
just,
if we both hated the same chore and nobody's doing the laundry, this relationship isn't working, Lori.
I mean, you just got to go. You just got to leave.
It's over.
I mean, somebody's got to get the damn laundry done. And if nobody's doing it, then it's never going to work. So,
It's me. I'm doing the laundry.
right. Okay. Just kidding. So,
Just kidding.
yeah, dividing up the responsibilities of just daily living is not the same as, if you don't do this, you're out.
Right,
That's
right.
that I can't love you anymore.
I
That's
can't
that's a
love
little
you anymore.
different. It's a little different.
Yeah, I think it's also important to point out, Lori, that in all things, in all of the doing of the life things that have to be done at my particular phase of life, raising kids and working jobs and all the things, we just have a lot of fun together. And I think if that were lacking, I would not be a member of this relationship. So
That's important. We do too. And still, after all of this time, we're able to have a lot of fun together. So that matters. It goes a long way.
maybe
So
it's a condition of my
it's a
love.
it's a condition. You're no fun. Get out. Just okay. We could go on with this nonsense for a long time.
Oh, my nonsense never ends. Find us on social media. The We're Talking Shift podcast group on Facebook is a great place to rehash some of these conversations with us. Lori, I appreciate you as always.
Well, I appreciate you too. And everyone, we appreciate you for listening. So go and make some epic relationships happen in your lives. See you next week. The needs and relationship levels that we just talked about in the podcast. So it's going to give you reminders on what the levels are and give you some great prompts for reflection and journaling, or if you want to have the conversation with yourself or your partner. So check it out. It's free, and I think you'll find it to be super helpful.
Sounds like a date night idea, Lori.
It could be a good date night, or it could really go south. So I don't know. You'll have to determine that for yourself.